I can see everything, and I'm going to begin. I have a little screen in front of me, and I'm going to...
Are we recording yet?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay.
Okay, welcome one and all to this, our largest Zoom ever. I'm Carolyn Ingvarson, convener of Lighter Footprints, and so far we have 277 and counting. It's the equivalent of our town hall meeting for candidates, and you are all very welcome. There's no bucket for donations at the door of this town hall today, but if the urge comes upon you to help us with the costs of the 8 online Zooms today, please hit our donate button at some point in the next day or so. Many people have put in long hours to make an event like this work, and we know you appreciate it by being able to continue to do it with your support. We're meeting in various locations, and I want to acknowledge our First Nations people, the custodians of our land and waters, wherever we are. In my case, the traditional owners of the land I'm meeting on are the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation who cared for the country for so long, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. So we're here tonight, apart from the fact that we have to be crazy to be doing something like this, because we have listened and watched and learnt from those we respect about the impact of our continuing carbon emissions on the global climate, and we are very, very worried. We can see it already, and we don't want it. What comes next is terrifying, and the time to avert its worst impact is so very short. The science says that our risk of tipping this planet into irreversible damage is very high, and immediate action is required. And by that, I mean right now, not in 10 or 20 years when it is upon us. And we know that what needs to be done can be done. People often say to me, local government can't do it. It's China, or it's national, or it's state. We wondered how true that was and decided to look around us to see what councils are able to do. We have a blog that collates some of what we found, and we had a session on this to hear about a range of things. Local government can play an important role in leading its community away from carbon emissions, and we are asking our candidates to say what they understand of this. Individual councillors can make a difference, and your support for those who want to see action taken on climate change is why we bother to do what we can to show you your candidates. How lucky are we to have Craig Reucassel with us today? I think there must be no one who's on this who isn't just excited about the fact that we've got him here with us to provide a context for our ward discussions. Craig is a well-known radio and TV presenter, as well as that prankster known to us through The Chaser. His recent series have shown how passionate he can be through the War on Waste, the Plan for Planet A, and the new big series, Big Weather. So thank you so much. But I can ask you some, and I thought I would start at a personal level and say that people often think that individual actions mean so little in the scheme of things that it's not worth even trying. What would you say to them about this enormous problem we face? Sit tight and others will solve it.
Indeed, that's not the approach. So can I just firstly acknowledge the traditional owners of the land I'm on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. Thank you so much for having me along here. Look, you know, we have heard recently from Donald Trump that it's going to get cooler. For those of us who maybe aren't entirely confident in that opinion and might sway slightly more towards the scientific analysis out there, I think that we really need to be taking action now. And it's interesting when you talk about councils doing something or individuals doing something, because it's not to be confused with taking the pressure off the federal level at all. That's not the case at all. We really need action to happen at the federal level. But one of the things I found interesting when I did War on Waste is that I think I had a very traditional perspective of power in Australia. It was like, you go to the federal and they do everything. You know, they're the ones that have the power and they make the change. And in actual fact, what we saw from that was that community change, like people taking action themselves, and councils as well, were far more responsive than most others. Now, it just, at the moment, we've got such a massive problem facing us that we really need to be taking action on so many different levels. Also, one of the reasons that it's good to take action as an individual level is you actually start realizing where the barriers are. And that kind of makes you go, hang on a second, who's not doing the thing necessary to actually fix this problem? Who's not making it easy for me to get renewable energy? Who's not making it easy for me to, if I want to get an electric car, to even have the infrastructure there to get that? And that's part of also engaging with this as well. So look, it's not over to us only as individuals. One of the really sad things about Australia is that the bar is being set so low that in actual fact, individual action can easily overcome what we've done as a nation and as a government. So last year, our emissions went down 5 million tonnes. We have like 10 million households. If we got half of the households in Australia to drop 1 tonne off their carbon footprint, it would be the same as the government achieved with millions of dollars. And that's bloody easy. So unfortunately, government should be able to do more, but is generally not doing that. And out of the last 6 years, 3 years, our emissions have actually gone up. So yeah, we need to do some big things, and council can do quite a lot. I think that councils, if you think about it from your own perspective, councils are, you know, that they're right there in your community, and that's a really important part of it. I mean, I know personally in my case, when I was looking at the possibility of an electric car, I was like, well, don't have off-street parking. I don't have anywhere to charge it. I spoke to my council, were the first people I actually spoke to. I was like, well, can I drape a cord across the pavement? The answer is no, apparently. But, you know, that's the whole point, is saying to them, well, look, you know, I know there's some councils down the road that have started to invest in charge infrastructure and started to roll that out in the area and make that more something that we see naturally, and therefore we're more likely to take up the technology that's there already. So that's something that council can do. Also, councils, I think, so many people I speak to are like, I really want to get solar power or whatever, but they went, oh, it just became really hard. Councils don't necessarily have to be putting their money hand in their pockets. It can be also just helping people with advice and doing the right thing. I mean, I know your council has already, for instance, gone to FOGO, and that has a big climate impact as well. I mean, it's there's about 7 million tonnes of CO2, over 7 million tonnes of CO2 created each year through food waste, and most of that's because we chuck our food in our landfill bins. So the fact that the councils in Melbourne, such as yours, have actually made a difference and done that already has an impact, and it's great to see that happening. So look, I think that you got to think about it in a sense. When we talk about ourselves taking action, don't think of yourself as one solo person. Think of yourself as a million people taking that action, because that's what it's about. It's about lots of us taking the action at once. And similarly, for people who say, oh, I'm a council, we can't do anything, there are over 500 councils in Australia. A number of those have already said, oh, we're going to be net zero by 2025 or 2030. And if all of them do that, that has a massive impact. And not only do they start doing it themselves, but they can then make it easier for their community to do it. One of the things I think a council really can do is, I am concerned about when you see a switch to solar, that people of lesser means are going to be low income people are going to be left behind. And I know that Darebin Council, I think, has actually got a great solar saver system there, where they actually put up the money for people who are from low income households, and then pay it back with zero interest over 10 years, taking it out of their rates. You know, that kind of thing is so great, because it's not only has it an advantage for the whole community, because reduces emissions, it also reduces the costs for people that can't deal with it. And it's such a fantastic thing, such a simple thing that can be done. So look, I think councils, the thing about councils is that they're more nimble in a way. I know there are constraints, there are things they can't do, but councils do have a lot of ability to make change, and it doesn't always have to be massively expensive as well. So, you know, just being engaged with the community and having an active community like yours makes it a lot easier for them if they can engage with you guys and go, what can we do to make a change? What are the things that are going to have an impact in the community? So look, I definitely think at the individual, family, council, state government and federal government, level, we need to make a big change. And Australia has Australia and Australians have a massive carbon footprint. So we've got a lot we can cut there.
That's excellent. Do you think that this COVID period that we've been through has taught us something about the way we work as communities, and has possibly directions for the walking and the riding and the getting out of your cars? And
yeah, look, I think look, some things will swing back, obviously, and I actually don't want. Look, the fact that we're doing this over Zoom is great, because there's certain things that we've done. I heard the health minister say the other day that they instituted a health policy in 10 days that they were planning to put in over 10 years. And something like a pandemic speeds up certain change. So it's great that we, nowadays, Sydney to Melbourne was the second most travelled plane route in the world. And I think that's going to change a little bit after the pandemic, because people won't be able to justify saying, well, I'm going to fly to Melbourne or Sydney for one meeting. You'll say, well, we've done it on Zoom for ages. So that will change. But I don't want people to confuse zero emissions living with being locked up at home. And that's totally not what it is. We have the technology there at the moment. So for instance, you see these things where people say, look, these cities that went into lockdown, it was the first time we could see the mountains for years. We've never seen the mountains, Now, the thing I want people to realize is that came from lockdown. But if you changed, for instance, to renewable energy charging cars, and that was the way in which you transport, or green hydrogen cars or something like that, the technologies that already exist out there, you will also still be able to see the mountains and still have the glorious traffic jams that Melbourne is so fond of. I want people to realize that we can have clear skies and zero emissions, but still have traffic jams. I want, it's not that we really want the traffic jams. We do have to solve that. But what I'm trying to say is, it's not about locking down. It's not about not having people in jobs or anything like that. That's actually plays exactly into the kind of climate deniers, or delayers, climate delayers as they call them nowadays, climate delayers hands. So I think we've learned a lot of things that we should take on the journey forward, but we've got to realize that there's some changes there that can mean that we can still have full active lives out there and just not be creating the same damage. I mean, it's ridiculous to not use the solutions we already have, because unlike COVID, where we're still waiting for a cure, climate change, we have enormous amounts of cures and we just got to use them.
Local government does tend to say that it can't do much, that it's constrained by all the state rules and regs and the federal oversight and lack of money and stuff. Have you come across councils where they have just taken leaps and got on with it?
Look, as I said, examples I gave before, I think there's lots of councils doing things. I mean, Randwick Council in Sydney is a very active council. They've got zero emissions goals. They do an enormous amount of things and work with the community on reducing emissions. There's lots of councils around Australia doing this. I think that those constraints are not necessarily there in a lot of these aspects. I know that when I was talking to councils a lot about FOGO, and you get a lot of pushback, it's like they're initially like really excited and the community is excited, and it's like, no, it's just a bit hard. We don't want to do it. I think it's important for communities to keep in touch with their councils and push them, and also congratulate them when they do the right thing as well, because they get a lot of the negative feedback, but do they get the positive feedback? Do they get the positive feedback when they do the right thing? It's really important to give them that positive feedback as well. I think also when I've spoken to councils, again, they tend to think of themselves as one council. There's lots of little groupings of councils that work together, and that's a much better way of doing it. If you're going to bring in, for instance, a FOGO system, or if you're going to say, we're going to try and bring in charging infrastructure, EV charging infrastructure for our people in our council area, it's ridiculous for one council to do that alone. They should be getting together with 5 or 10 councils, all the councils in the area, and doing it, So I think that if they're saying there's a barrier there, you got to really say, well, what is it? Why don't you kick up a fuss about that barrier? Because that's part of the process, in the same way that we can go, hang on a second, we've been told to, go carbon neutral cars, but there's very little infrastructure for us. We kick up a fuss, council can kick up a fuss if they're not being helped by state governments. And I think that at the moment, there's some fairly active programs from the Victorian government. So there's a lot that could be done.
Indeed. we've been looking at some of those, and one of the issues is that most of the carbon emissions are not council driven, but they're community and business and industry, and they're outside of their actual permit, so that it's
but that's exactly where I was saying, like, you know, the Darebin approach is not. I like the fact that councils say we're going to make ourselves zero emissions, but that if it's just the council's energy, that's quite a small amount of the energy of the whole area. So I like the next step being, how do we help the members in our community to reduce their emissions? That's the kind of question. That's where you get really powerful, and that's where I think, you know, as I said, like just in Victoria, it's probably less of a factor because you've got those amazing kind of solar benefits at the moment, and so they're kind of that's a state government issue. But it's been able to go, well, how do we help members of our community take the next step? And feedback from the community, such as yourself, saying, look, the thing I'd like to do is this, but I can't because of, you know, I'd like to do X, but I can't because of Y. Can you help out on that? I think that's really useful. If you know, if they know there's a lot of people in the community trying to take that next step and they're struggling, then that's where they can help. So yeah, look, I think it's important. It's great for councils to say we're going to be, you know, net zero, but it's really even better if they're working with their community to help out on their journey.
Do you think it's realistic for us to be asking councillors, new councillors, to take a stance on climate change and to lead at a local government level?
I think so. I mean, realistically, look, we're all going to be impacted by this, and councils are going to be impacted by it as well, as a matter of fact. You know, it's going to affect rates, it's going to affect insurance in the area, it's going to affect housing, it's going to affect a lot of the infrastructure that councils deal with, stormwater drains and all this kind of stuff, roads. It all gets affected as we go further into climate change. So to be honest, if you have a council that's not dealing with it, then they're really being negligent in their duties, to be honest.
Well, now that's it's a tricky one when, in fact, it's often perceived that it's the extremists who are out there trying to get things shifted, and that it's not.
I think that's past. I genuinely do. I genuinely do think that's past. I don't think that calling for action on climate is perceived to be a radical action in Australia anymore, or indeed in a great deal of the world. I think there are those that call for it in a radical way, but I think there's an enormous amount of the community who are passionate about it and concerned about it, and across. You know, one of the most, to be honest, one of the most damaging things that's happened in Australia, and it really happened under kind of probably Tony Abbott, was the polarisation and the politicisation of climate change to make it as if it's a left-right issue. It's not a left-right issue. Right-wing people and left-wing people don't get affected more or less by climate change. Everyone. It's a human issue. It's not even, I don't even really see it to be an environmental issue, to be honest. It's partly environmental, but it's a humanitarian issue. We all get affected by it. And we see across the world, there are like conservative governments leading massive reductions in emissions across the world. We see at state level, we see massive changes happening under conservative governments. It's not a left-right issue. And those that try to paint it as such are doing so to protect, generally to protect their own interests.
That is a message that sits very well with us in Lighter Footprints, who've been working very, very hard to see this as a non-partisan issue that affects everybody.
Yes.
And it's a powerful message that you've left us with. Now, I know that you've said you've got 10 minutes for us tonight, and we've more than used that. So I guess that we will just say thank you to you once more for taking the time out of your enormously busy life and talking with us about the issue of local government. Is there anything you want to say to our...
Just thank you to everyone on this call who's also taking time out of their enormously busy lives to, you know, be engaged in the local politics. Brilliant. What a step. That's the important part of the step. Well done.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Craig. That has been very, very helpful. Great start.
Cheers, guys. Keep it up.
Thank you. Right. Thanks so much. Righto. Well, now you're free to go, and we'll move on to our next little bit. How lucky were they? were we to have him there. All right, now let me just take you through the plan for the rest of the night. This is us as a big group, and our plan is to split you into these other groups, and there's a distinct process for how we're going to go about it. There's 8 separate Zooms here, and this is tricky. It's a rare Zoom that doesn't have hiccups, so you're going to have to be a little bit prepared for the odd thing to go wrong. This is the plan. Where candidates have agreed to be part of the evening tonight, and where the numbers of attendees per ward have been over 30, we've set up a separate Zoom for you. In 3 cases, the wards have been combined to provide candidates and attendees the chance to meet up because the numbers were not high enough to run separately. The Zoom link to your particular ward is in a chat, but I don't want you to go there yet because we're not ready for you. The first thing I'm going to say is to the facilitators who are setting up those rooms, this is your signal to get those rooms ready for the next stage, whilst I tell people a bit more. So this is what we have. We don't have all candidates. Many decided against attending, but 32 of 59 said yes. And this is what we do have. Listen out for the one that you want. Mailing has 6 of 8 candidates. Maranoa and Solway are combined and they have 6 of 10 candidates. Riversdale is a new ward and it has 4 of 6 candidates. Bellevue and Cotham have 5, possibly 6 of the 9 candidates. Lyndon and Studley have 3 out of the 10 candidates. Gardner has 3 of the 5 candidates and Junction 2 of the 4. And in Glenferrie, we have 2 of 5 candidates. And if you're interested in Glenferrie and you don't belong to any particular ward and you'd just like to stay, you can just stay where you are because the Glenferrie ward will run off this Zoom with me right here. So you don't have to go anywhere, just sit tight. Everyone's session will be run by a facilitator who will have a backup support person as well. They'll run the session and manage the time. And those who choose not to be here can still be, that's the candidates who are not there, can still be contacted. You can still talk to candidates who are not here about issues that you want to raise with them. Once you hit the particular link for your Zoom in the chat, it will take you away from this link to a new Zoom link, which you will need to accept. You'll say, yes, do you want to leave this? Yes, you say, you go to the new one. That's all except Glenferrie, who will stay. Now, each candidate will have the same amount of time and they'll begin by answering a few questions that have been circulated to them already. And you will hear those questions before they start. They'll be read out to you. Candidates can unmute themselves when they speak, but the audience participants will be on mute without that capacity. The attendees can ask questions by writing in the chat. The facilitator will take you through how to do that, and the questions will be selected from there to ask the candidates. Attendees are expected to be respectful in what they write. Running an online forum means you are always open to possible abuse, so we're hoping that you will do as you always do in our meetings, and that is be respectful. So we're now ready for you to take the next step. Is there anything in the chat that I should address that says I didn't hear it, I didn't understand it? I can't see. No, I think we're okay. Your facilitators are in the process of setting up and getting ready for you. So,
excuse me, Carolyn, I can't see my ward room. Where am I supposed to be looking?
Have a look at the chat.
Yeah, I've been through it a couple of times.
It's not there, Mick. Do you want to head off and start your meeting?
Oh, do I just go straight to it?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Go straight to it. All good.
Now, Julian, you tell me then, where are people to look for their Zooms?
All right, let me just load up my chat. All right, everyone. Biggest experiment in a lot of footprints organisation. There we go. And I'm sending everybody an email now, an RSV for the RSVPs with the same information.
And where is it also in the chat?
It's in the chat right now, and I'm sending the emails now.
So you're getting a double hit here. I'm in the chat and I'm looking for where the list is. I can't see it, Joe.
Just up a little bit, from the bottom.
Up from the bottom. I'm going to the bottom. You see what everybody is doing, scrolling down to... No, I can't see it, Gillian.
It's just you have to go up 5 messages, Caroline. Just 5 messages up from the last chat.
I'm just going to post it. I'm going to post it one more time, guys. There we go. It's all there. I promise.
Ah, yes, I can see it now.
And it's in your email as well.
Can you indicate that you can see it if you're looking for a ward? Yes, I can see that people can see it. So the trick to finding the next bit is scrolling to the bottom of the chat, or I suppose it's the top of the chat, to the beginning, to the latest part of the chat, and looking to see, you can see quite clearly which ward has which one to hit. So I'm hoping that you will now hit those and disappear from my screen. Thank you so much, everybody, for doing this. I hope you have a very good night tonight. For those who are moving off, bye-bye. We just sit. We just sit.
I'm not going to one of them. I'm not going to one of them.
You're going to mine, which is Glenferrie, and I'm staying here.
Oh.
Is it going to